Well, we are here with a friend and a really great cultural treasure in this community, Kate Beane. We're really excited, director of the Minnesota Museum of Art, relatively new to the job. We are also sitting in the middle of downtown St. Paul in the spectacular Endicott building. The museum's not open right now because of COVID. Got a blank wall over my right corner, which is where your new space will be. So I wonder if you could start by taking us into the future a little bit. So a couple of years from now, or even a year from now, what will we see when we come to visit you here at the Minnesota Museum of Art?
Well, I think what we're going to have here, this is certainly a blank canvas, and these walls are going to be filled. These spaces are going to be filled with art and with people and community. And what we're really hoping to achieve here is to have a museum, and so we're lovingly called the M for the Minnesota Museum of American Art, and people here know us lovingly as the M. We have this collection that we've had for quite a while that we've been building on over the years. Our organization has been around for many, many years, since the 1890s. And we're sitting here in the historic Pioneer Endicott building. And I don't know if I'm the first Dakota leader in the Pioneer building, but I'm good with that. And I think it's really exciting. So what we're trying to do is create a space for art downtown, and to create a space for artists and community members to come together, and for storytelling. My background was in public history and in museum leadership, and I have done a lot of community engagement over the years, and work to really uplift marginalized, diverse communities who aren't always at the table, who aren't always authentically represented throughout our state. Mm-hmm. And we want to be able to authentically help represent and work with community members and neighbors here to show the diversity and the beauty of not only St. Paul, not only Minnesota, but the region.
Yeah. Those words out of the mouth of any arts director are important. I think out of your mouth, out of your incredible experience and history and all that, means something, I would say, much deeper, and because that's been your life's work. So I wonder if we could spend a bit of a time about you and the museum and the course of how those two came together, because you have this legacy institution in the, as you mentioned, the Pioneer building, telling stories that were probably told a certain way for a long time. Mm-hmm. You obviously bring a whole different skill set to that. What did you see as the opportunity of you and this museum coming together?
Well, I come from a family of educators. And artists. One of my grandfathers was Seth Eastman, who was one of the early landscape artists of Minnesota, who recorded early Dakota life. When I came to this organization, one of the things that was really interesting to me is that it started as an art school. And it was started by community members who were really interested in community arts and community craft. But in thinking about who those individuals were at the time, understanding their passion and their love for the arts, none of them looked like me. None of them looked like my community. Right. None of them looked like our communities today. In terms of the diversity and the makeup of who started this organization, and really thinking about the heart of this organization and who we are and who we've been over the years. I'm the 10th executive director. We've had numerous spaces where we've been. There's been times when our art has been our collection has been in storage. But there is a heart there. There's something there that is beyond buildings, that is really about connection and story and community craft, community arts, and bringing people together. Right. And that was something that I was really excited about. My background in community engagement and working with diverse communities, our communities are full of people who are artists but don't necessarily call themselves artists. Art for us in our communities, oftentimes it's a part of everyday life. It's not something that you just hang on a wall. It's not something elitist. It's something that everybody takes part in. And there is community teachings and sharing and storytelling and history that gets passed down. And so, I really entered into the visual arts world in a way accidentally, I guess. I come from a background in American Indian Studies and studying Native history and Dakota history most specifically. So I know the history of this place, where this building is. I know where the rivers are. I come from one of the local Dakota village sites here, Kaposia. My relatives come from there. And so my family has been here since time began, and I know this place really well. Right. And I think that the land helps us with that storytelling process. There's a connection between art and the riverways and community and this place. And we just need to listen to those teachings.
One of the things that you mentioned about 6 really interesting things, and I want to go on. Let me take one of the smaller ones and then go bigger. You mentioned this idea about Native artists who aren't seen necessarily as artists. Mm-hmm. I remember when the Lax Museum was reopening, and I think it was Batiste Sams, I think, who made baskets. She was there at the beginning of that. And in some places and cultures, if you didn't pay much attention, she was seen as a craftsperson. Yeah. She was, in fact, also an artist. Yes. And I imagine you wind up seeing what is and isn't in the collection right now. In the collection right now, what your vision is and what you have right now, what is the collection mostly made up of?
Well, I think over the years we have diversified our collection to include a lot of different, to be representative of a lot of our neighbors here. What we're trying to do as we move forward is really to have more of a regional focus. Mm-hmm. And so there's a particular identity that we have that I think is different than Mia and the Walker and the Wiseman, and we all have our own identities. We're not in competition. We support one another. And our unique identity is that we really want to focus on, our neighbors here, and not just in St. Paul, but within the region. And when I look at the collection, I see a lot of stories over time that sometimes have been told from singular narratives and singular perspectives. And I see a lot of burgeoning diversity. We have the largest George Morrison collection of over 100 of his works, which is amazing. And he's a wonderful Ojibwe artist who was recently featured on the U.S. Postal Stamp. And we have, a great representation of artists here in Minnesota, but we can only grow because our artists are growing and our focus is growing to include more and more people. And so when I think about our collection, I also think about a lot of the Native artists within Minnesota. I mean, this is the Minnesota Museum of American Art. Right. You can't have the M without having Indigenous artists. We are Native American artists that make up this region, and there are some gaps there in terms of some artists that I want to make sure that we include within our collection. Some artists that are living that we want to continue to support, and I think that there's a great opportunity to help support and uplift our Native artists, our BIPOC artists, our artists of color, who have supported each other over the years but haven't always been well represented within museums.
When you talk about arts and narrative and arts and intersections with cultures, there's an awful lot of discussion right now, but what do you do with pieces in a collection that tell a story of colonialism, white supremacy? Mm-hmm. What do you do with those pieces? In some cases, people are saying we should never show. In some cases, people are saying show these pieces with interpretation. I imagine you've come across some pieces, certainly as a historian, as you go back through the collection, that may lead to a cringe or a question or something. How are you handling it?
I would say most collections in this country have those pieces. Right. And, it's interesting for me as a Native woman to look at some of these narratives. I mean, even my own grandfather, Seth Eastman, painted some images that sort of make me cringe of like, oh, he shouldn't have shared that. That was too private to our community or whatnot. And I think that one of the things I've learned over the years is that the biggest division is fear amongst people. And oftentimes people are so afraid that we're going to do away with what was there, that their story is going to become lost. Right. And I come from a community who knows what that feels like. We experienced it. And so I don't advocate for that erasure whatsoever. I am very much in support of additive processes where we expand the narrative. And I think that there's a great opportunity for education. And so I think the big thing for me and for our communities is to learn about one another and to be truthful. And so to be able to put these pieces in conversation with one another, to be able to broaden the perspectives. In doing that, we also have to think about size in terms of how much space do these items take up? Does it allow space for other perspectives? You have to think about, the placement of panels and text, how much text can you really put on a panel. And that's also where the visual arts is such a great opportunity, where I'm coming from the field of history, where we're always trying to edit down these words. And art can tell a much more full, complex story than words can. And so you have this great opportunity to put stories in communication with one another and to tell different perspectives through different pieces in interesting ways by putting them in conversation.
In doing that, and with these conversations, you've had a lot of experience with community engagement. You've also led efforts. You and your twin sister, Carly Bad Heart Bull, helped lead the effort to rename Lake Calhoun. So you are no stranger to community engagement. How much of that is going to be about having the decisions we just sort of talked about, have community brought in, and when do you draw a line on that? Because at a certain end of the day, you're getting input, but you're the curators.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, decisions have to get made, right? And it can't always be a complete consensus of everybody because there are so many different perspectives. I think what's really important is for people to feel heard and for there to be adequate representation at the table when decisions are made. And it's huge for us, I think, in order to be able to do the work that we want to do and in order to be representative of communities, we need to reflect those communities and we need to represent those communities in terms of working with community and not for community. Right. Communities know what is best for them and they have their own priorities and communities are very different. Partnerships can be defined a million different ways and can be implemented a lot of different ways depending on who you're working with. Even within one community, there are so many different perspectives and varieties of partnering together. But community partnerships is something that we fully support. We really want to work with community to help uplift community voices. It's not about us. It's about the stories and it's about the people.
When do you center yourself and your native self, and when do you allow yourself to not have to carry legacy? That's
a good question. That's something that I think I've struggled with over the years. Yeah. I'm a very private person, and as you know, my dad is a filmmaker who documented my life for a period of time. And for me, when I was younger, I would not have felt comfortable in the spaces where I sit today. Yeah. I would have not felt welcome. And it took a long time to feel comfortable within myself and to understand that I have a place here. Yeah. And part of that is related to coming from a people who have been removed. And I think that there's this magnetic pull to this place that we as Dakota people have, where we understand the story and the heart of this place in a way that is very emotional and withstands any amount of time or any development. And so when we come to this place, we are so connected to it. It helps us. It's a prayerful thing to do. Mm-hmm. I've been in rooms, quite many rooms, where I'm the only one that looks like me, where I'm the only one with my perspective. and had to learn how to find my voice to be able to assert that perspective in a way that's going to be heard, that's not going to be combative, but that is going to be truthful and compassionate. And I learned a lot through listening to the stories of my ancestors and what they went through. My grandfather, Charles Eastman, when he moved back here in the 1920s or so, he couldn't find a house to live in St. Paul. He couldn't find a job. He was one of the first Native medical doctors, and nobody would hire him because he was Native. And so our family has tried to return home over the years and have not been welcomed in this place. And so to come back with full intention and understanding that we belong here and that we have stories to share, perspectives to share, and deserve to be at that table is something that has been, I think my father taught me along the way. And I saw that, that perspective from him. He always says, we're about as Minnesotan as you can get. Yeah. Unfortunately, none of us had the privilege of growing up in Minnesota. Yeah. But we are about as Minnesotan as you can get with our ancestors. We're Faribaults, we're Eastmans, we're descendants of Cloudman and Many Lightnings and Champadutowee and Stand Sacred Women and these strong, powerful leaders here in the metro area specifically. And so we carry their spirit with us and they help us to navigate because they know that they belonged here too.
Wow. Can I finish with just some logistical things?
Sure.
So we're here, you let me in the front door. I can't walk in the front door right now. When can people start coming here? When will we be able to walk through that wall and see more? And also, I guess, how do those of us who want to propel this, how do we help make sure you guys get here?
So we have a little bit of a capital campaign gap that we need to fill. Okay. And so, you know, our timeline, we really would like to go out to bid and we would like to start construction. But we do have some funds that we still need to raise in order to be able to do that, in order to keep up with the timeline of opening in 2023. We are currently seeking about $1 million. We have a $700,000 gap. But with the rising construction costs, we know that's probably closer to $1 million. But essentially, we are going to be able to open in phases. And we have this beautiful space that we can start with, this 200 square foot space where the gallery was before, but we've expanded to be 3 times that size. And so we want to continue with that construction so that we can be 3 times the size, so we can serve 3 times more of our neighbors and help represent 3 times more of the diversity here downtown. We've been really successful in doing window exhibitions during the pandemic and being able to reach a lot of community members through the outside, which as somebody who is always working with communities who don't always feel comfortable walking into a museum, being able to represent that on the outside, the people who are walking by, has been really beautiful to see. And so I encourage people to come by, drive by the museum, look at the window exhibitions, support us. We are seeking some funding to wrap up that capital campaign so that we can get the funds needed from the state in order to finish construction.
Okay, so Kate, right now I can't walk into the doors here, which is really frustrating because I want to tell people that when they come here, the world's best chocolate shop is also right upstairs, which is great. But how right now can I experience the M? I'm now going to start using M, the Minnesota Museum of Art, now known as the M. How do I experience part of that right now?
So though the M is not currently, our building is not currently open to the public, we do have community partnerships with local schools and artists and art organizations where we have some beautiful artwork throughout the skyways here downtown, as well as some beautiful window exhibitions that continue to emerge and help highlight arts in our community. And we have tours of some of these spaces. We also continue to partner with a lot of local artists and community organizations on projects that aren't housed here. Again, it's not about us, it's about supporting and elevating others' voices. And so we still have a lot of programming that we're continuing to work on and support. We're very busy. And we also have some exhibitions that we're supporting and helping to develop at other museum spaces that eventually will come to the M once we do reopen.
Great. Well, Kate, thank you so much. We're really excited about the work of M, and I can't think of a better person in this position. So thank you very much.
Oh, Pidamaya.